see one more joining. I'm just going to let them join here, and we'll start up. Again, for the folks that have joined us in the last 30 seconds or so, thank you for joining us. This is Orlando Ferrer with Informed Decisions and Davis Yokana. And today we'll be doing a webinar on retrieve real-time documents and reports over the web using your IBMi. And we'll start the webinar here in give it about 30 seconds or so. Okay. Well, we'll start the webinar here today. For those folks that have joined us so far, thank you for joining us. This is Orlando Ferrer with Informed Decisions, and we have Davis Yokana as well, who will be giving the webinar today. And today's webinar will be retrieve real-time documents and reports over the web using your IBMi. For those folks that are new to us, we are Informed Decisions, and I'm just going to give you a 2-second brief description of who we are. We were founded back in 1994. Informed Decisions has been a leading solution provider in the document management area and automation payment solutions area for IBMi, also known as the AS400. Informed was one of the first IBMi business partners to implement comprehensive IBMi host-based electronic document distribution solutions that was powered by using basically smart routing, what we call smart routing, to distribute out via fax, email, and storage, as well as retrieval, and of course with laser form printing capabilities. So at the end of this webinar, which will make it quick here, be about a 20-minute webinar altogether, we'll have a Q&R session, and during the sessions, if you have any questions or have any comments, please feel free to use your chat box to send me some questions that we'll be discussing at the end of the webinar. With that being said, here's Davis Yokana, who will be giving today's webinar. Davis, take it away.
Good morning. We're going to discuss today how to use iView and iDocs to search and retrieve documents that are spool files, originated spool files on the I, conveniently using iDocs technology. And the presentation more or less presumes the existence of a spool file. There are 44 pages of this spool file. It's just a sample spool file designed to illustrate a point. Not very attractive, but it's basically an invoice to each of the 44 presidents, and you don't have to apply graphics to do what we're going to do today, but you can, and so we do in this example. And so we take this overlay and we map the spool file text onto it, and so we get a little invoice for all 44 presidents. And the way we set this up is quite simple. We went into iView and we defined an archive, and the archive scraped 2 items of data from the spool file. You're not limited to 2, certainly. We scraped the name, which we defined as being type alpha, and we scraped the 2 email address, which we defined as type E for email. And the types that are available are character, variable, dates, spool file form type, all sorts of things that you can scrape from the spool file itself. And we've said that we wanted actually to burst when the name changes, so we're going to take our one spool file with 44 pages and we're going to burst every time the name changes, which is going to give us a separate burst, a separate spool file for each page. And I've also said that it's going to go into iDocs and it's going to get that graphical content I just showed you and apply it before it archives it in PDF format. Right there. That is extremely simple. And we set up a little monitor, a little iDocs engine or iView engine. And this works exactly the same way an iDocs engine does. It's built on data queue technology. So we have here defined two out queues to monitor, actually one out queue to monitor using different tests, different criteria. You can define up to 9,999 different out queues in one engine. You can define up to 9,999 different engines. And what we have said in the case of our president's spool file is that the user data, and we can test using any one of those external spool file attributes. The user data must be equal to president's, and if that's the case, then we're going to invoke our president's archive, well, which is very, very simple. The nice thing about a data queue engine is that it blocks until there's something for it to do. So it's going to connect to the data queue, which is an i5OS pipe, and when a spool file is released into the out queue, i5OS sends the spool file identifying information through that pipe, and the engine wakes up. Until that time, it does nothing. So it's quite economical with CPU cycles, unlike some applications that periodically poll or enumerate the contents of an out queue. We block until there's something to do. That's important if you run a lot of these engines. We just basically sit there and do nothing until there's something to do. Now I went ahead and ran that through, excuse me, and it literally was as simple as I'm just describing. So now I can go to my browser, and this is Internet Explorer, and this is the iView Document Center. iView is a Tomcat application. It will run on your IBMi. In this case, it's running on a PC that is connected to the i. It will run on any Tomcat server, Linux, Unix, your toaster, it will run on it. And we specify in the configuration what server we're talking to. This is an IBMi. What our schema is, which is our IBMi library, excuse me, that's right, our iView library, and where we store the documents. We're storing the documents in the integrated file system. In fact, they can be stored anywhere that will map to a directory in the integrated file system. So it could be networked to Windows or to Linux or to Unix or to something else if you chose. And we defined a few other things in here. And we also have user control. So I'm one of the allowed users. We're going to authenticate. It's going to be the backend server, the iView server, the IBMi in this case, is going to do the authentication. But we add that profile to the list of authorized users here in iView. We also have groups as well. So when you open the profile, you can also specify which archives this profile has access to. That's the list of archives pulled off of the IBMi. So with that said, I go here. Here's my president's archive, and I'm going to go searching in it. Now I do not want a case-sensitive search, but I would like to search in context, meaning I'm looking for a substring, and I'm going to go look for the name George. And I do a search, and I pull up the 3 Georges. Now you've noticed that this is spool file content that I scraped from the spool file and stored as metadata. This is administrator configurable. So you can, just as when you search under Google, you get a little paragraph that shows you the context of that search hit. So here you also get that search context displayed for you. Administrator configurable in that you can select which metadata to display. And then with my search results, let's take a look at George Washington's invoice. It opens the Adobe plugin or whatever plugin you have installed in your browser and displays the document. Now there are a couple of important things here. The first is that you're using a web browser to retrieve your IBMi documents. Everybody knows how to use a web browser. You don't have to train somebody. A web browser is already installed on the PC. You don't have to go install one. You just tell somebody, here's the URL. That can save you a lot of time, particularly if you have multiple sites. Secondly, I'm using the Adobe plugin or some other well-supported plugin. Again, you don't have to worry about that. You just tell somebody, make certain you've got your plugin. In fact, the browser will most likely prompt you for it. And maintaining that correctly is some other company's problem, not yours. And what you've got open here is a PDF document. A PDF document is a very, very standard web format. You can save it to your desktop, attach it to an email, print, whatever you would like to do. Very, very easy format to work with. Or just display it, as you did right here. Now, we have some other features, if I get back here, that are a part of this. I did scrape an email address from the spool file, so I can open up the email client and it automatically places the email address in the to text box right there. If I'd like to change that or I'd like to add recipients and I'm running iMail, I can pull in email addresses from the iMail address book directly. I'm in here as no reply. And then I could send it. It does not use iMail to send. It has its own email forwarding agent. I can also annotate if I chose. If I wanted to add an annotation, I can. It adds that annotation to a DB2 table and associates that DB2 table with the document. It does not alter the document itself. And separately, I could go looking for associated documents using related documents. To show that to you, I've got to go into another archive. We've got an archive of invoices. So here, again, you see the search context. I can open up my document and show a, admittedly, black and white invoice to Alpha Appliance. Now, if I'd like to see the documents that are related to that invoice, I click on the Related Documents link. There is a related document in the check application, check archive. And here's the check that paid it. Now, the important feature here is that you're not limited to just 2 archives. You could have 10 or 15. So if you have a number of different archives that all share a piece of information, such as a sales order number, with one click, you display all of the documents related to that one sales order. So if you sold something over the web, you have your order acknowledgement to the customer, your order to the vendor's order acknowledgement to you, the vendor's shipping document to you, your shipping document to the customer, vendor's bill to you, your bill to the customer, customer's payment to you, your payment to the vendor, all of which would have that order number on it, and with one click, you could bring them all up. That's the point of that. Now, the scroll up feature here is obscured by the GoToMeeting, sorry. What I've shown you so far, and this is not designed to be complex, this is designed to be quite simple, involves working with documents that you don't alter. In fact, we have a markup tool we call iSign. So if I have something that I'd like to mark up, and the usual use for this is to sign a document, I'm going to click on the link. And again, this is an issue of being granted access to it and knowing kind of what you'd like to search for. I'm just going to go searching on nothing because I know there's only one document there to search. But if I were, you could have different archives if you've got different truck drivers out there in the field making deliveries and you want these documents signed and they've got little iPads with them, you'd probably put the archive, you'd probably put them into different queues, into different archives to begin with. But you could separately put them into one queue and search on just that truck driver's route number, for example. But I've got a document here, and I've got a new link called Sign, and I click on it. And there's my document that has been stored in a pre-processing stage, meaning pending signature. It's not available for searching in the main archive. It's in this pre-processing state. And the usual use for this is to add a signature, but I can mark it up in any way that I want, including just make notes on it if I chose. So the way this is done is you click on the top left and bottom right of the area you would like to sign. Now, I'm going to mark up the document first, right there. Click on the pencil button. I'm going to widen my pencil a little bit. And I'm going to say, and I'm doing this with a touchpad. You'd need a stylus to do this well. Not. This is very slow without a stylus. Not received. They would do it better. Save it. And it's too tiny, but it's in there. And we'll go mark it up again. This time I'll sign it. I'm going to sign it in blue. Okay, that's a bit bigger. I would have to do that a bit bigger. So I could email this because I have scraped an email address, or once again, I can go to the iMail address book, pull in something else if I wish. But I know what's in there. I could print. I believe we've got a printer defined, but I guess we don't. Not in this archive. If I have an IBMi printer queue defined, I can print this to it. So any printer which I've defined, which is directly attached or networked to my IBMi, I can print this document on it directly. When I'm done, I can just close it. It goes away because it's out of the pre-processing state. I go into my archive. I go searching in iSign. And it didn't make it. Or did I went into the wrong one? Went into the wrong one, I'm sorry. Here's my document. And you can see my signature. And you can see my note, even if it's really tiny. Yeah. So you can see we've marked up the document. Now that markup is an image that has been merged down into the PDF. It is a part of the PDF. With the annotations we did previously, we did not actually alter the document. Here we're altering the document permanently. And this is stored in the integrated file system. You can search and retrieve it over the web using iView for as long as you wish. It is an integrated file system object, so you can work with it there if you wish. Now, a note about integration, because people run this on their eye for a reason. The metadata is always available to you in a very simple format. This is our metadata for the president's file. This is all the spool file information. This is our file name, importantly. And if you shift right here, here's all the metadata. Oops, sorry. So this is accessible to your RPG SQL program, or your RPG program, or your COBOL program, or any kind of language you want. So you can read this and integrate it with your in-house programming. And all of these documents reside by default in the integrated file system. And you can get the file name out of the metadata file, and you know the default the base location, because that's defined in the application itself. So you always have access to this document through it for any other piece of software that you like. And in fact, you can control the file name in the setup if you wish. Let's go down here to presidents. You can control the file name right here if you wish. And that relates back to the original spool file. So, one other comment on working with iDocs and with spool files. We have a module called Smart Router. And the Smart Router works also on the same principle. It's a data queue engine. It monitors the out cues that you define. This one is monitoring this one right here. And it blocks until there's something for it to do. And when there is something for it to do, it looks at both the internal spool file content and the external spool file attributes to determine what to do. So I can specify tests in here on a page-by-page basis, testing any combination of external spool file attributes and internal spool file content. And if this test returns true, I'm outputting just that page to what are essentially virtual out cues. And that can be very, very helpful. And the way I've used it here is to basically burst the documents and write the name into the user data, because I can override any of these external spool file attributes from within the smart router. And I've chosen to override the user data. And what you end up with, if I had one 44-page spool file to start with, is something like this, and you see there was truncation, but I've got the president's name in the user data. So that's a very helpful way of looking into the spool file, retrieving some spool file content, and using it to mark that spool file in some way that helps for identification. Well, Orlando, I think that's
well, good.
the short version, so to speak.
That is. No, that's good. Well, actually, a couple of people have actually sent a couple of questions in, and please, anybody who's attending, feel free to use your question chat box or your regular chat box to ask questions. We've had a few questions that came in so far. Where are the documents stored? Was one of the questions.
Well, in the integrated file system. In the integrated file system, that can be networked to another machine if you wish. You can put your Linux machine out there. Your Linux machine will do Microsoft networking, or it will do NFS, and you can just put them all on your nice perky little Linux server, and it will be cost effective and very quick. The only consideration with using a remote server is that the response times need to be pretty good, because Tomcat's going to go out there and pull it in over the network and then send it out to the browser. So that pull in from the network is additional latency. So you want to make certain your response times are pretty good. But people do that and report good results with it as long as they have that bandwidth.
Good. I'm assuming that could be a Windows server or system as well.
That could be anything you want. Anything you want.
Okay. All right. We have question number 2 that's in here right now. Is the PDF file name configurable?
Yes, it is. As you just go into your iView archive and come down here, and I think it's either F4 or F1. It's F4. It shows you the keywords that you can use to name that spool file, including metadata. So you see start index 01 to start index 20. So if I'm scraping metadata such as name from my spool file, then I can use it to name the resulting PDF in the integrated file system.
Good. So plenty of flexibility there.
Well, it also shows you, it gives you some flexibility if you're actually using iView with another product. If you need to be able to identify that PDF file in some way to that other product using the file name, then you could use this feature to do that.
Okay. Good. All right, we got one more question here. How many related documents can you have to a related document? So how many related documents really can you have? I think
it's 15. I think it's 15. I think.
15. Okay.
I'm sorry.
Okay, so it's quite a bit of them.
Folks.
I would say so. I would say so. We got another question here. Can I take data from the spool files and send it to an Excel or a CSV?
You certainly can, but not with this product. You would have to use iMail, which has an export function. Hold on a second, let me adjust my library list. You could, you can take option 10, you can select a spool file, and if you look at the supported formats, you've got Excel and all sorts of other things. You don't have CSV for this, but you have CSV when you take the corresponding option for database file.
Yeah.
When you are exporting a database file, you can export it with these formats. So CSV, XLS, save file, diff and text.
Exactly. And additionally, with these iMail, you have a whole bunch of APIs that come along with it, so you can actually program this into maybe a CL or your own program to be able to use these functions to send out this.
Yeah, you can trigger all this programmatically.
All this stuff.
You can trigger an iDocs merge. You don't even technically need an iDocs engine. You can trigger it programmatically if you like from your CL or your RPG program. But people find the iDocs iDocs engine convenient.
Exactly. Cool. All right, and then just one general comment that was out there as well is, I can see how iView could be very useful for our clients. I like what I see. So.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
We agree.
There you go. All right. Well, if anybody has any more questions beyond this, when it comes time to, if there's any more questions along the way after this webinar, Mike Donkels will be out there calling folks and just for follow-up questions as well. And if you have anything for us, please feel free to just email us at info@informeddecisions.com. And I encourage everyone to visit our website at www.informeddecisions.com. And naturally, our telephone number is 949-709-5838. You can select option 2, and that'll get you questions answered along the way as well. All right, everyone, thank you. I know we're at the end of our 30 minutes that we started with, but thank you for attending. Thank you for your time today, and we look forward to hearing from you. All righty, thank you.